guys, and welcome back to the Crawl Room. We're here once again in this wonderful rancy room for all things Formula One. So, the Chinese Grand Prix has come to a close, and what could be said, it was an okay race, wasn't it? A nice welcome back to China after 5 years away, and it was the first sprint weekend as well, which, yeah, I don't agree with the sprint format, and once again, this was a rather mundane affair until the last couple of laps in the sprint, but yeah, as always, we're going to go through the entire weekend, and we're going to score the drivers accordingly. So if you've never seen this series before, I award the drivers out a maximum of 10 points based on their overall race weekend's performance, and I go all the way down to 0 if they have a particularly bad one. Take a look out for bonus points though. They're sometimes an offer for some drivers to do something extra special during a race, and on the very rare occasion I do all minus points, those drivers do something extra special, but for all the wrong reasons. Now, as this is a sprint format, I've decided I'm going to change the format of the Crawl Room. Now, obviously, over the last couple of years, we've had these sprint races implemented, and I have based their drivers on their entire weekend, which include the sprint qualifying, the sprint race. And I thought, no, that's not the way to do it. This time around, I am going to be basically giving the drivers the score I have awarded them for the weekend, which is free practice 1, qualifying, and the main race itself. And for the sprint qualifying and the sprint race, if I feel that they did something well in that race as a standalone sprint format, I can award an additional up to additional 3 points. So I can either score them 1, 2 or 3. It's not going to happen for every driver. It's only going to happen to those drivers that did something really well in the sprint, and they can earn up to an additional 3 bonus points on top of what they're going to score for their entirety of the actual official Formula One race weekend, if that makes sense. I'm sure it'll all become clear as we go through with it. But before we kick things off, let's, as always, give you the scoreboard. It's on the screen now for you to take a look at and see where your favourite driver is going into this race. And based on what they did this weekend, can you see them going up or down? It's going to be interesting to see how this sprint format plays out. Let me know if you like it or not at the end of the video. But yeah, basically, it's going to be drivers that I think deserve a couple of extra points for what they did in the sprint, but necessarily didn't deliver in the race, or vice versa, or someone that just had a perfect weekend all round. So without further ado, let's kick things off with the race winner then, shall we? Of course it was. It was Max Verstappen. What could be said for his race weekend overall? Well, it was pretty perfect, wasn't it? Pretty perfect. The main race itself was absolutely superb, pulled away from pole position, and the only laps he didn't lead was the strategy where Red Bull pitted him, so Lando led a few laps, and that was about it really. There was not really much more to say. It was near enough perfect, didn't quite pick up the fastest lap, but still drove a dominant race, didn't he? He really, really did. He was just sublime once again. And I know I always said these top drivers, when they don't quite get fastest lap or when they don't lead every lap, I need to knock points off. But how can I knock points off for what Verstappen is doing at the moment? It is absolutely superb. He's not doing hardly anything wrong at all, is he? Let's be honest, he really isn't putting a foot wrong at the moment. He is just driving controlled and measured races, you know, pushing when he needs to push and just backing off when he needs to back off, which is 95% of the race. And he's just doing a great job, isn't he? So for me, for this weekend overall, it's a perfect 10 for him for that. It can be no less. He got pole position, he led the race, he won the race in dominant style. Didn't quite pick up fastest lap, but that was only because Alonso went on a different strategy towards the end. You know, it's a perfect 10, it has to be. He's just doing so well at the moment. And for the overall sprint race itself as well, had a very scruffy qualifying, didn't he? At one stage it looked like he wasn't even going to get a lap in because he kept falling off the track in that final sprint qualifying 3 session. As it was, he ended up in 4th place, and after looking like he was going to be staying in 4th because he was struggling, lap 9 he finally got through into the lead and then buggered off into the distance by some 13 seconds and crossed the line to win that as well. So I'm going to give him an additional bonus point for the sprint itself. So he's getting 10 points for his overall race weekend, the one that really matters in Formula One, the one where 25 points are on offer. And for the sprint format, okay, had a clumsy qualifying but made up for it in the race and did some good overtakes and kept us on his toes just a little bit, didn't he? And then he buggered off into the distance in dominant style, so it's an extra 1 for that. So for the total this race, he's getting 11. That's how that works. It's as simple as that. We're going to move on to P2. Securing second place, it is of course Lando Norris in the mighty McLaren. What could be said for Norris's weekend overall? McLaren were baffled by how good they were, which I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad sign, to be honest. Yeah, sometimes it's nice to come into a weekend, expectations are top 5 finishers, and there you are fighting for podiums. But yeah, it's a bit baffling that you don't know why you're quick, because then that might mean you don't know why you're not slow. They could turn up to Miami expecting to be good, and they might be shit, and they might not understand that either. So yeah, still some things to learn by McLaren as to why they were good, so they can implement it into future races. But Lando Norris this weekend has been one of the drivers of the weekend, hasn't he? He really has. He got the sprint qualifying pole, let's not forget that. And in the main qualifying itself, he got himself into P... Where was he in qualifying in the main one? I just remember the sprint qualifying pole, but he was still respectable, wasn't he? He was third. Was he third? Was he fourth? Either way, he did a good job in the qualifying as well. A solid effort for where the McLaren should be. And in the race itself, okay, looking like a top 5 finisher. The first safety car intervention for Bottas, pulling off to the side of the track. The VSC then became full safety car. That did benefit Lando somewhat. I'm not going to deny that. The timing of that was quite good for what strategy he was on, which elevated him up a couple of positions. And then then he was in second place, and he did an absolutely fantastic job, didn't he? As mentioned, he led a few laps as well when the Red Bulls pitted first. But yeah, came out second and then ran the whole race there. He withstood pressure from Perez. Perez wasn't able to close in on the gap, and he just kept a nice margin to Max. Okay, Max could have probably pushed a lot harder and won by 25 seconds, but there was no need to. But yeah, he kept the margin to Perez, so that's absolutely fantastic. So for his race weekend overall, it's going to be a perfect 10 to him for that. Great solid qualifying, a great way to finish the race in P2. Even if you didn't quite understand why you were quick, at least you were up there and you were quick. It's a shame really that the sprint qualifying didn't come together. Qualifying on pole there was an absolutely fantastic effort, but then just hung it round the outside of Lewis Hamilton for far too long. He should have just fed into second place and, picked up a good podium there, but as it was, he just picked up a couple of points. So I'm going to be harsh and not give him any additional points for the sprint, because he cost himself a spot on the podium there in the sprint as well, and that was obviously crucial points for the McLaren squad. Comfortably in third now, I'd like to add, but there were more points on offer. He just hung it round the outside of Hamilton far too long, and he knew he was going to get squeezed out, but rather than just feathering off and feeding into second, he went for a bit of an audacious move to try and hope he stayed in the lead, but it wasn't to be. So yeah, a harsh not to give him any additional points for the sprint, but a perfect 10 for his main race on Sunday. In third place, we come to Checo Sergio Perez. Now, what could be said for Perez's weekend overall? It was looking good, wasn't it? The sprint race itself, he was in second place and he was okay. There were no dramas there, no issues. But again, nothing special or spectacular, but just did the job he needed to do. And in the main race itself, it should have been second, shouldn't it? Let's be honest. I know the strategy didn't quite fall the way of Perez with the timings of the safety cars like it did for Lando, but that's just one of those things. That is racing. And Perez did have the fastest car on the grid, as we saw with Verstappen, to be able to hunt down Lando Norris and overtake him. But as it was, he didn't. He managed to get past the Ferraris, but couldn't find anywhere near the pace he needed to catch up with Lando, let alone overtake him. So the gap stayed around 4 seconds throughout all of the race, it must be said. For Checo, for Sergio Perez, I'm going for a solid 7.5. I think that's fair. I think it's probably, generous maybe by up to a point there as well, to be honest with you. But he was third. It was a podium. He's not looked like he's been drastically shite like he was in the mid stages of last season, where he was absolutely awful. He's still picking up podiums, which is good. But it should be a 1-2, shouldn't it? Should be a 1-2. But it isn't quite. But Checo this weekend has done okay. He's done solid. He's done the job that's expected of him. But he should have been P2 in that main race itself. So it's 7.5 to Sergio Perez. And then we come to Sha-la-la in his way into P4. What could be said for Charles's weekend overall? It was solid, wasn't it? Once again, the Ferrari having some good pace in the car, not quite as good as the Red Bulls over the race pace. The qualifying pace was a little bit absent this weekend, wasn't it? That must be noted. The one-lap pace wasn't quite there, but they were clearly building the car up for the race pace strategy, which played out in some respects as to where they finished today. But yeah, they were well down there, 7th and 8th, weren't they, in main qualifying, I think it was, for the actual race itself. But yeah, Charles this weekend, he's slightly had the measure over his teammate Sainz, which is respectable, I must say. Yeah, I mean, apart from these little issues that have been creeping in with the Ferrari drivers seemingly wanting to try and have a big shunt but still managed to get it back to the pit lane, that's surprising, isn't it? Charles was the first one to do it, and then Sainz duly obliged and copied the session later. Yeah, apart from those little hiccups, which I'll allow in the conditions that they've had, in the mixed conditions, the damp, the track rubbering in, something really weird about the circuit, as in it's not been resurfaced, but they've retreated it. They've retreated the top so it stops cracking, and the long loop as they go down the long back straight, that bit there. There was loads of photos of it, and it got like quite deep cracks in it at stages through there. So I'm surprised they didn't resurface it. But yeah, as it was, they retreated the circuit, which meant it was extra slippery when it rained, and it took a lot longer to rubber in, and it was very inconsistent. So yeah, I'll allow an odd tap into the wall there. Charles has been fairly solid this season, to be honest, and I don't mind him knocking a wing off. I'll allow it. But yeah, for Charles this weekend overall, I've given him a solid 8 points for the weekend itself. I think that was fair and respectable. Shame he couldn't get a little bit more out of qualifying, but again, that was just the one lap pace of the Ferrari. The race pace itself was decent, got himself up into P4, that was respectable. And in the sprint sessions themselves as well, he did okay, nothing massively, majorly drastic there. As mentioned, tucked it into the wall, and he had a great battle, didn't he, with his teammate and with Alonso in that gaggle for the final podium spot in the sprint race. And that was quite fun to watch, wasn't it? So I will be giving Chalala an additional point for the sprint race, because I think he deserves it. He did okay in that sprint, did solid. Okay, he tapped it into the wall in the sprint qualifying, but that's just one of those things. So it's going to be 8 points for his overall weekend and 1 additional point, meaning a total of 9 for Shalala. And securing 5th place, we come to Carlos Sainz, smooth operator. Smoothish operator this weekend, it must be said. This is the first time we've seen Sainz in a format that we're not familiar with. Like, he's not on the podium. The pace was okay, but nothing magical or spectacular. Again, suffering with the same as what Charles was in terms of had to have a mandatory crash in qualifying. But yeah, that was the main qualifying itself, wasn't it? Let's not forget that. But he managed to get the car back. They fixed the car. They got it back out again. Fine. Yeah, again, Sainz was solid this weekend, and there was nothing majorly wrong with what he did, but there was nothing majorly right either. We're used to seeing him do an extra special performance. He's done that this season so far, whereas this time out, it was just solid. Again, he had a great battle with his teammate in the sprint qualifying. He had a great battle with his teammate in the race itself, particularly at the start, where they pushed each other wide, and it meant that Hulkenberg and George Russell slipped through. So that wasn't an ideal start by the pair of them in the main race itself. A little bit of tension, isn't there? I must be honest. The drivers seem to get on okay off track, but I think on track there's a little bit of tension. I think Sainz is still trying to prove a point and saying, look, you shouldn't have got rid of me. So he's not quite giving the space that Charles necessarily deserves by being a teammate. You don't want to take your teammate out, do you? But at the end of the day, all's fair in love and racing, and both drivers gave as good as they got in the sprint and in the main race itself. Charles Leclerc managed to come out on top in both of those this weekend overall, but Carlos Sainz still had a bloody good race weekend, a solid one at least. So for Carlos Sainz, he's going to be getting 7.5 on the crawl room to him for his overall race weekend's performance. I think he did a solid job there, did a great job, sort of matched his teammate but not quite, fell just short of the final hurdle. And for the sprint race, for providing the little bit of excitement, trying to have a go for Alonso and then having a battle with his teammate, he's also getting an additional point there for the sprint as well. So yes, well done to Carlos Sainz. It's a total of 8.5 to him. Securing 6th place, we come to George of the Russell. I don't even know what to watch out for. I don't even know what he can watch out for there, because he's just been fairly mundane all weekend long, hasn't he? Sprint qualifying was a disaster, but he managed to claw his way back to a point in the main race itself. As for the main race itself, in the actual Sunday performance, the Sunday special, the Spectacular, got himself into qualifying 3. And yeah, finished here in 6th, which I really do think he dragged the most out of the car he could. That car's looking a little bit shite, isn't it? But yeah, I don't really know what to do with George. He's just under the radar, isn't he? Very much under the radar. Mercedes themselves under the radar. It's going to be a solid 7 for me for George this weekend overall. Yeah, up and down, it must be said, but the race performance itself was good. just again, nothing special or spectacular. I know the car might not be quite as good as it seems to be, but at least go challenge the Ferraris, or go do something, George. Go do something. You know, if this had been his 2022 campaign, I'm sure he'd have been inside the top 5 easily, maybe even pushing for a podium despite it being a shit car. I mean, we look at that 2022 car and realise how bad it was. There's no way that Mercedes now is as bad as that 2022 car was, but they're not getting anything out of it, either driver. So yeah, it's a solid 7 to George. Didn't do anything wrong, didn't do anything really, really special or spectacular, but he was solid. 7 to George Russell. And then we come to Fernando Alonso. And what could be said for Fernando's weekend overall? Again, another solid effort, wasn't it? A solid effort in both the sprint and the sprint race and the main race itself. The sprint race amounted to nothing, so he's not getting anything for that. And as sad as it was for him to see him get a puncture, the bullshit time penalty was bullshit. I'll fully admit that. That was a bullshit penalty once again. Gave him 3 points on his licence as well, which we'll come to further down the line with a certain other Aston Martin driver that only was awarded 2. Fucking bollocks, isn't it? But yeah, nonetheless, Alonso this weekend overall, the main race itself looked good, wasn't it? We had a fantastic start. We got up into P2, and there's a little bit of the, oh, come on, he can do this. Quickly slipped down to around the top 5 area, and then the way that the safety cars were called and pulled out didn't work out his way. The first safety car came out, and he ended up going on new softs, which didn't last, and then he had to pit towards the end of the race to get on a new set of mediums again, just to come out and get something done. Came out in around 12th and was able to climb his way back up to P7, so that was a good recovery drive. It was just one of those where more was on offer, more was available to be had, but he got the most out of it he could. So for Fernando Alonso this weekend overall, it's going to be 8 points to him for that. Solid weekend overall by Fernando. Not awarding him any bonus points for the sprint, unfortunately, because it did all come to nothing at the end of the day, and yet it were his fault he got the puncture. As much as he did provide great excitement, great racing, and didn't deserve the penalty, I can't give him any bonus points. But it is just a solid 8 to Fernando Alonso. Then we come to Oscar Piastri. What's your favourite pastry? Finishing in 8th place here this weekend overall, and I think it was a weekend of maybe what could have been for Piastri, but at the same time he wasn't on par with his teammate. That has to be said. We've just got to be honest about that. There's no point blaming the rear floor damage he got towards the end of the race, and there's no point blaming the overall timings of the safety cars, which did ultimately cost him a couple of positions. At the end of the day, he was on for a 6th place finish at the very best, I believe. His teammate was still up there in P2, wasn't it? So yeah, you know, Piastri, again, just chewing his tyres a little bit too much, isn't he? He's a little bit hard on his tyres, and he's not quite got away with that just yet. That's why he kind of tumbled away in the first half before the safety car for Bottas. Then that timing of the safety car didn't work out quite right. The VSC, etc., lost a couple of places there. And then as he was running around in that 7th, 8th area where he ended up ultimately finishing, the second safety car period came out, and just as it was going back in again, it got arse-ended by a wayward Ricciardo after being hit by a certain driver behind him. Damaged his floor extensively, which meant he couldn't put up a fight for a charging back through Alonso, and was lucky to finish inside the points. But yeah, you know, Oscar overall, a lot of weekend, you know, a lot of things didn't go his way this weekend, but at the same time he didn't ultimately have the pace to match Lando. He certainly wasn't going to be finishing on the podium this weekend. Maybe it was an absolute stretch to finish inside the top 5. Admittedly, whatever happened with the timings, etc., and the damage did cost him a top 6, but he still wasn't on par with his teammates. That's why it's a middle-of-the-road 5 to Oscar Piastri for me. His first time at the circuit, so I don't want to be overly harsh, but at the same time, you know, it's he's still some way off his teammate, and he is just chewing those tyres a little bit too much. So a middle-of-the-road 5 to Oscar Piastri. Okay, it's points, but it could have been more and should have been more, even without the misfortune. Managing to pick up a couple of points, hallelujah, praise the Lord. It's Lewis Hamilton. I mean, here he is in 9th, after qualifying a lowly P18 in the main qualifying itself. Yeah, you know, I just don't know anymore. I really don't know. It's unfortunate, isn't it? It really is. You're seeing Hamilton scrabbling around at the back. He was lucky as well with the timings of the safety cars and things, because without those, I think he'd have maybe just scraped a point. If not, he'd have been down there in 11th, 12th area, because he was making no impact for so long, was he? It took that second safety car period before he actually started to make ground on anyone. So Yeah, Hamilton this weekend, I don't want to be overly harsh with him, even though I probably should be. You know, the main race itself wasn't fantastic. It's 4 from me, generous by probably a point there. There was just nothing to show from it at all. But, having said that, you knew he had the pace in the car and you knew he could deliver, because what a fantastic sprint race he had. What a fantastic sprint weekend. He thought he had pole, almost did, until Lando Norris's lap was reinstated. And, you know, Hamilton still lining up second, put up a great fight. He drove incredibly well. He drove so well, did Hamilton. He really deserved it. He did a great job in that sprint weekend overall. So, yeah, he's getting 4, and I'm giving him 3 additional bonus points for that fantastic effort in the sprint, because that deserves praising. He really did well in that. It's just a shame it couldn't translate into the main race weekend itself. You know, the qualifying came out in Q1 and had a tough race, so yeah, shame there. So yeah, probably generous by a point when it comes to the main race itself, but I've got to add those 3 bonus points for what a fantastic sprint was. So Lewis Hamilton, after an okay up and down weekend, ends up with 7 points on the wall. That's fantastic. 7 points on the crawl room to Lewis Hamilton. Securing the final points pay position, we come to Nico Hulkenberg. That's right, it's Nico Hulkenberg. What a fantastic season he's having so far. What a fantastic season Haas are having as well. I was expecting them to be where Alpine are right now, and they've got no signs of improving, have they? But yeah, you know, Hulkenberg this weekend, fantastic effort in that main race, in the main qualifying. Got himself into Q3 and was running inside that P10, P9 area throughout the majority of that race. I think it was just the second safety car period where he didn't quite, he was like 11th, 12th, wasn't he? Because there was a couple of cars ahead that didn't pit. One was Ricciardo, one I think was Stroll as well. So yeah, you know, he was always inside the points, and considering everything that they had thrown at him strategic-wise with the virtual safety car, the main safety car, the second safety car, he drove incredibly well to stay inside that top 10. What a great start he had as well to elevate himself up into P7 off the line. You know, Nico Hulkenberg normally is criticised for the starts he has in a race. I know the other weekend he should have really, you know, maybe scraped a point or two, but a bad restart. But yeah, this time around, he drove sublime. Sublime. That's how well he drove. It was perfect. Absolutely incredible. You know, up into P7, fought well, fought the right battles when he needed to, and just delivered a perfect finishing position for Haas, which is another one of the top 5 cars got into difficulty. I can finish P10, and that is where he did. So absolutely fantastic for Nico Hulkenberg. It's a perfect 10 for him for this overall weekend. Q3 appearance, main race running around inside the top 10 throughout the majority of it. Perfect. That is there's no more that can be asked of him for that. The main sprint itself, sprint qualifying, wasn't very good. The sprint race itself wasn't good either. Just had a lack of pace, and they didn't know why. Tumbled down the order, finished pretty much last of the runners, I think, didn't he, in that? Couldn't find an issue with the car, couldn't find an issue with Nico Hulkenberg, clearly, because whatever happened had sorted itself, but they just couldn't find out anything wrong. But yeah, ended up last of that. So, of course, no bonus points there, but for the main race itself, perfect 10 to Nico Hulkenberg. Just missing out on points, unfortunately. In 11th place, we come to Esti Bestie Ocon. Esti Bestie to you. Ain't like Esti Bestie Ocon. Do you know what? Ocon has been really, really good this weekend. I've got to admit, you know, Ocon has delivered the goods. It's a P11, it's outside the points, I know that. But he was putting up some good battles, some good defensive drives. He was making sure the RBs weren't getting anywhere near him. He was trying to shoo off the Haas of Kevin Magnussen. He was, you know, finishing better than his teammate Gasly. He had an okay qualifying. You know, it was all sort of going right for him, and he kind of deserved that point this weekend. But as it was, he didn't quite, but did a great job. Did Esteban Ocon this weekend. I don't think you could have really extracted any more out of that Alpine if you tried, to be honest with you. He really, really has done a good job, and it was nice to see them in the mix throughout the majority of the race. You know, they weren't just tumbling round at the back and bimbling around and getting lapped and, you know, just being a general hazard. They were actually up there in the fight, and Esteban Ocon was part of that main gaggle for that final sort of points paying position area, you know, from that like 11th to 14th. He was in there and having a bloody good go at it. It really was. Esteban Ocon, this race itself, is getting 9 from me. It really is. I think that deserves a 9. It was good. I think he's going to go unnoticed and unappreciated by a lot of drivers and teams there. And I think throughout most of the weekend he's probably not going to get talked about very much, but I think that was probably one of the drives of the weekend. I think he did well. To get a P11 in an Alpine, there was 18 finishes as well, let's not forget that, so it wasn't as if like there was many cars tumbling out the race. Yeah, he did a great job. It's 9 to Esteban Ocon for me. That was a good job by him. It was encouraging to see him. Shame he missed out on the points, but yeah, I think if they can carry that momentum into Miami, there's no reason why they can't get some. 9 to Esteban. In 12th place, we come to Alexander Albon in the Williams, and I don't really know what to say this weekend overall. What was it? It was a P14 in the main qualifying, a P12 in the main race, of course, talking about him right now. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a shame, isn't it? They look very, very lonely, the Williams. They were absolutely nowhere in the sprint format, were they? Both out in Q1, both bimbling round at the back, like they almost didn't want to be there. Like, let's not damage anything because we've got nothing spare. That's very much how the sprint looked to me. Just keep it at the back of the grid, out of trouble. Like, just don't do anything. Yeah, I think that's how pretty much they played it. But the main race itself, yeah, okay, here he is in 12th at the end. Elevated a few positions, but throughout the most race, it was P14 to P16 sort of area, mixing it round there with the likes of Zhou and Tsunoda and Ricciardo. So, yeah, you know, it was okay in places, but elevated to 12th due to the issues with the RBs. I have no doubt that the RBs would have finished ahead of Albon this weekend. And obviously the time penalties then that it occurred for the other drivers as well. So, yeah, you know, overall, it looks okay. I've given him a solid 6.5 to Alex Albon. I don't think this is the best we've seen of him this season so far, to be honest. But Williams have said that Miami should suit their car well. So I hope that's true. And I really hope we can see a Q3 effort and a fight for points. Even if he just misses out, we need to see that fight for points, because it's just not been anything good at all for Williams, has it, at the moment? Let's see if they get that chassis as well. I think they said it's going to be delayed as well. But hopefully the spare chassis should be there. But we'll see. But for now, 6.5 to Alex. Probably generous by a point there as well, to be fair. Nothing special or spectacular. Did he get the most out of the car he could? Probably. But it was difficult, and he finished behind an Alpine. Can't say much more than that. Finishing in and unlucky for some P13, it is, of course, Pierre Gasly. And yeah, unlucky for his mechanic that got hurt, unfortunately, during that pit stop where they'd not quite secured the wheel on right. So as he got dropped down, Gasly went to gun it. The wheel flipped up and flicked and hit one of the pit mechanics. Thankfully, just minor injuries from what we're hearing, so that's good. But I think they're going to sit him out of Miami, from what I've heard, just to be on the safe side. So gets a couple of weeks off, which will be well earned and well deserved. Pierre Gasly's race was going okay up until that point. He was sort of matching Ocon. He was. This season it's more been about the Ocon sort of advantage he's had over his teammate. But this weekend it was fairly stalemate between the two of them. They couldn't really keep them apart. Lost a lot of time with that pit stop. It was 20 seconds it was in the pit stationary after the incident, which of course isn't Gasly's fault. And he elevates himself back up to P13 in the end after what was a solid recovery drive. Yep, the safety cars helped bunch the pack back up again. But that's the luck of the draw. And P13, only a couple of places behind his teammate after losing 20 seconds in a pit stop. I think it's respectable. So for Pierre Gasly, he's getting 8 points this weekend. Good to see the Alpines a little bit more in the fight. They brought updates. Well, I say they brought updates. They actually reduced the weight of the car. They managed to get some weight reduction on the car at the previous round. And they said if it was going to show it anywhere, it was going to show it at China. And for whatever reason, the weight reduction has shown a little bit more visibly at China. And fair play to him for that. So yeah, Pierre Gasly this weekend. A shame he didn't quite have the look of the draw in terms of the difficult pit stop. But yeah, as it was, I've got no... without that pit stop, I think he could have been fighting there for that P11 with Ocon. Maybe just a little bit of a stretch to catch Hulkenberg. But yeah, overall, good pace. Nice to see an encouraging finish to Alpine up here in P11 and P13. 8 to Gasly. Next up, finishing in 14th place, we come to Zhou Guanyu in the Sauber at his home Grand Prix. The first ever time a Chinese driver has taken part inside the Chinese Grand Prix. at China, of course. What a fantastic effort by him, honestly. He has done so well this weekend. Well, I say he's done well, you know, I'm talking mainly about the sprint, which we'll come to in a moment, but the main race itself, okay, he didn't have the match for his teammate. He was out in Q1 where his teammate got through into Q3. And the race itself was looking a little bit turbulent in places, wasn't it? There were times when he was down quite far at the back. They went for a pit stop that put him well out of position with everyone else, but with the much fresher tyres was able to climb through the field towards the end of the race, which was encouraging in some respects, it must be said. Yeah, for the main race weekend itself, I've gone for a generous 4. I do feel he deserves a 4 for that main race weekend, mainly for the fact of just pure joy. You know, it made me smile when he was allowed to park up on the grid and get out the car and wave to all the fans on the track. And I think that was just such a special moment that China needed and that Zhou Guanyu needed to hopefully boost his season going forward. He's ticked off a big bucket list dream there, and fair play to Zhou for that. Unfortunately, the main race weekend itself, I am only giving him a 4-4, but you know, it had elements of being good there, but unfortunately just fell a little bit short. But we come to the sprint race, of course, where Zhou Guanyu just missed out on a point by 1 position. What a stunning effort that was. Q3, you know, into Q3, sprint qualifying 3 in that sprint race, and then in the race itself was able to keep himself inside the top 10. You know, that doesn't, you know, how did he do that? I don't know how he did it, but he did, and he just unfortunately missed out on the points by 1 position. So of course that is going to be a bonus 3 points to Zhou Guanyu for that sprint format, because that deserves praising. It really does. Fair play to Zhou Guanyu for that. 3 points for the sprint format, 4 points for the main race weekend itself, gives him a solid 7 in the end. That's probably his highest score this season by quite some margin. But yeah, he deserved it. I do think he deserved it. He brought a lot of fans to China. He has celebrated with them, and he deserved to have that moment that he had. 7 to Zhou Guanyu. Oh, here we are then. Finishing in 15th place, we come to Lando Stroll.
Looking back on my career, I'd describe myself as the 90s Nicholas Latifi. I had a lot of money, hardly any talent, but every now and then I would score a point.
Ho ho! Here we go. Strap yourself in. It's a Deniz of the week to Lando Stroll, but, you know, what could be said? He wasn't doing that well, was he either, to be fair? We were sort of mizzling around the points. Yeah. I don't know where I'm going to start this all off with, to be honest, because was I, you know, annoyed at the incident? Of course I was. I saw the incident happen. I was like, what a fucking idiot, is what I said in my exact words. Then I watched the replay again, and then I laughed. And then I heard what he said afterwards, which was, this guy is an idiot. Now, yeah, that's not me saying it about Stroll, though. That is Stroll saying it about Daniel Ricciardo. What on earth? What is in his fucking mind? What is in this bloke's mind? Is he generally... I don't know what to say without offending someone, because it's going to be offensive. But, you know, like, he's just... He's... Oh my God, like every time I think of Lance Stroll now, I just think he's a fucking cauliflower. I really do. I don't think it, like, there's clearly no mental capacity going on inside his head at all, is there? What on earth why does he think it's everyone else's fault? Like, I don't fucking understand. I don't get it. Like, it hurts my head. It hurts my head. He literally was looking at the court. You could see his fucking helmet. He was that way. He was looking that way. Ricardo's there. I'm looking that way. Bang! Up his arse end. Oh shit, that's Ricardo's fault. What a fucking moron. Honest to God. Like, I just don't understand it whatsoever. Hulkenberg behind managed to avoid that incident, didn't he? He didn't crash. You know, he was watching what was happening. And the speed he hit Ricciardo as well shows he wasn't looking at the pack slowing down. You know, it wasn't just a love tap. He fucking rear-ended him. He mounted him. You know, any other day, that would have been rape. You know, it was just crazy. So, yeah. Lance Stroll, what a fucking idiot. Of course it's the Deniz of the week to him, because he was absolutely fucking stupid. Yeah, I don't really know what more to say to that. I mean, you've got the Aston Martin team, Mike Crack. I mean, it's just a fucking comedy club, this, isn't it? He's standing up for Stroll, saying it's harsh. Harsh penalty. They've not looked at the full. They've not looked at the full data. They don't fully understand. I fully understand. He's a fucking idiot, and he shouldn't be on the grid. That's what I get, Mike Crack. I know you're paid by Daddy to make sure that you say the right things, but come on. There's got to be times where criticism is valid and warranted. This was one of them. Like it was at Qatar last year, where he was a fucking melt and attacking his team, and everyone just swept that under the carpet. Like even Sky News and everything just deleted all those comments about him pushing his coach and everything. Like he's not in. Oh my god, it grates me so much. It gives me headaches. I just don't know what I can say anymore. I mean, I'm even struggling to make sense with how angry I am with him. He's such a fucking bellend. He really is. He really is. He needs a dose of reality, doesn't he? That's a kid that needs a dose of reality, and he needs a good fucking slap. He needs like Mike Tyson just to turn up one day and go, "Hiya mate, are you Lance?" "Yeah, I am," and just batter the fucking shit out of him. Knock some fucking sense into him, knock some reality into him, and give him all the fucking smacks he never had as a child. That's what Lance Stroll needs. He'll take responsibility for his actions then. You know, he'll admit it when he's wrong. You know, he'll know to say no to things and he'll not fucking moan. Like when his daddy tells him, "Get the fuck out of my racing team," he'll just accept it and go to play fucking tennis. God's sake, Lance. God's sake. So yeah, dinners of the week to Lance Stroll. I'm not impressed at all, in case you can't already tell. Gives me headaches. Gives me headaches. And then we come to Kevin Magnussen.
During my time in F1, I raced for 40, Ligier, Arrows, and I heavily invested in the Prost team once I couldn't buy a race seat anymore. I'm pleased to report that none of these teams survived much longer after my departure.
And there we have it, dinners of the week to K-Mag for the half-assed attempts at attacking Yuki Tsunoda. The move itself looked legitimate for the first part of it. You know, turn 4, wasn't it? It was up the inside, you think, fair enough. Then Tsunoda held it round the outside, and you think, well, that's okay, he'll just back out and feather in. No, he just lazily tagged him, fucking spun him round and gave him a puncture. And that was it, done. Curtains for Yuki Tsunoda. Kevin Magnussen was given a 10-second time penalty, which is why he finished behind Lance Stroll. But anyway, I forgot to mention about Lance Stroll as well, didn't I? Only 2 points. Only 2 penalty points on his licence for that. That's how much it gives me a headache. I forgot what I was even going to fucking talk about. 2 points on his licence to Lance Stroll for that. Alonso got 3 for a slight bit of contact whilst racing. Fucking make it make sense, FIA. Anyway, we're talking about Kevin Magnussen. He got 3 points on his licence for this silly lunge as well. But yeah, admittedly, it was an error. It was an error for Kevin Magnussen. It was silly. Shouldn't have done it. Should have backed out. It wasn't for points. He wasn't going to get points. But he took an RB out unnecessarily there. Kevin Magnussen, though, I have awarded him 2 points for the sprint race because I think he did okay in the sprint. I think he did decent, you know. His teammate went backwards while he went forward, secured a P10 finish. Okay, it's not points in the sprint formats, but it was a respectable effort. So I thought that was an encouraging sign. Thought, well done, K-Mag, that's worthy of a couple of bonus points for you. And yeah, hopefully that can follow into the race. And what followed into the race was his usual antics of not being on par with his teammate and then getting a bit shunty. Not acceptable. So dinners of the week to Kevin Magnussen, but the sprint format does save him somewhat because he will be scoring 2 on the Cruel Room. Then we come to the last of the finishers, of course. It is Logan Sargeant.
If I was to rate my F1 career and compare it to other Brazilian drivers of the era, I'd say I'm somewhere between Ayrton Senna and Ricardo Rosset. Not much to choose between them then, eh?
And there we are, a hat-trick of dinners in a row. 3 dinners in a row, doo-da, doo-da. Yes, Logan Sargeant for his just apparent lack of anything at all. And can David Croft, is he sponsored by Logan Sargeant? I'm not sure. But David Croft was literally wanking himself off, wasn't he, during that? Oh, look at that, what a fantastic mighty effort there, got it! God, look at Logan! Look at Logan! Oh my God! Oh, he's up there in 11th. Oh God! Oh God! Nico! Hold me, Nico! Oh my God, Ros! Oh God! Oh God! Oh, it's okay. It's okay. He's had to pit. It's okay. Oh God! Oh God! Look at Logan again. He's up there again. Oh God! Oh no, he's not pitted again. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm all better now. Oh God! I was huffing with my muffins then, Nico. And of course, Nico Rosberg in the commentary box trying to shut him the fuck up. You could see when he was trying to cut over him and just like, stop it, you're being embarrassing, you know. But nonetheless, he tried his best, did Nico Rosberg, but it wasn't enough to shut David Croft up, creaming himself about fucking Logan Sargeant being up there in the dizzy Knights of 11th when everyone else had pitted and he'd not. I mean, come on. Doesn't take a fucking rocket scientist, does it? So yeah, there you go. Logan Sargeant, Deniz of the week for his very much lack of pace in comparison to his teammate and pretty much the rest of the field. What a donut. He's really, really struggling to keep that seat, isn't he? Is he going to keep it for the rest of the season? I don't know. According to David Croft, he probably should do, shouldn't he? But to everyone else, I think everyone else is looking at that going, what's he doing? Yeah. So yeah, unfortunately, it's a Deniz of the week to Logan Sargeant and another poor performance by him. Then we come to the list of retirements in the race. So the last to retire in the race, the first on this list, of course, it is Daniel Ricciardo. What a shame for Daniel Ricciardo this weekend. I think he was having a good weekend overall. Beating his teammate in both sprint qualifying and the main qualifying itself was certainly respectable. Good effort by him there. And in the race itself, he was matching and beating at times Yuki Tsunoda. So, okay, decent, fair enough. I don't agree with this whole point with Ricciardo in the commentary, you know, in the post-race commentary, I should say, where he was saying like, oh, you know, we were on for a good result there when Stroll took us out, because Ricciardo had not pitted at that point and still had to have a pit stop as well. He did have to make another stop. So it wasn't as if like he could have dragged old tyres onto the end. It wasn't possible. He had to make another stop. So him in that false ninth when he got took out, he's trying to make it out like that's where he was going to be finishing. It wasn't, but he still had a respectable race. So, you know, he's not been awarded an Deniz or any of the weeks for that matter. But yeah, it's going to be a middle row 5 to Daniel Ricciardo, which is the maximum I can give a retirement, to be fair. So I've been a little bit generous there, mainly because I just feel sorry by the fact he's been assaulted by Lance Stroll and taken out the race in such a stupid way. He has got a 3-place grid penalty to take next time out, because when he was taken out by Stroll, during the process of being involved in a collision, Hulkenberg overtook him and he thought he had the right to re-overtake Hulkenberg, which was not correct. Got a 10-second time penalty for it, but didn't serve it because he was given it after the race had ended. So he was already in the pits and retired at that point, and even if he was given it, it was after the race, so he got three-place grid drop, which is incredibly harsh when, again, Stroll doesn't carry anything forward for being a fucking moron. So yeah, you know, Ricciardo misunderstood the rules slightly, should have confirmed it to his team, gets a 3-place grid drop and 2 penalty points, let's not forget that. Lance Stroll, absolute fucking shunt monster, took Ricciardo out of the race and only got a 10-second time penalty to serve in the race, and it's all done. Shit, bullshit. But yeah, 5 points to Daniel Ricciardo. Then we come to Yuki Tsunoda, rounding out a bad weekend for RB that was looking encouraging. I wasn't saying it was going to be points, but there were times there where you think, well, they're on for a good result. You know, Yuki Tsunoda had a bad qualifying, had a bad sprint qualifying as well, out in Q1 in both of those, complaining of a lack of grip and couldn't get the tyres up to temp in both of those sessions. But in the main race itself, he came good and started to match his teammate. But yeah, you know, that second restart was just an absolute disaster for the RBs, wasn't it? Before the green flag even fell to restart the race after that second safety car period, there was Ricciardo with heavy floor damage after being absolutely assaulted by Lance Stroll. And then later around the lap, turn 4, Tsunoda gets taken out by K-Mag. Just a shame. Just a total shame. So for Yuki Tsunoda, I've given him a solid 3. Out of the maximum of 5, I've gone for 3 points this weekend for Yuki. I don't think he did a good job of his teammate in terms of the qualifying results. In the race itself, he was doing okay and fairly matching him. But yeah, unfortunately, just 3 to Yuki Tsunoda. And last but by no means least, we come to Valtteri Bottas. Oh no, Valtteri. What a shame. What a shame for Valtteri Bottas. What could have been points there. He was running around with Hulkenberg throughout the race that he did do. And after qualifying himself into Q3 after a fantastic qualifying effort there inside the top 10, is a fantastic effort, and in the sprint qualifying as well, inside the top 10 there as well. So yeah, you know, there's not much to say for Bottas's race other than what could have been. Really, there was opportunities there to maybe scrape a point, maybe just finish outside the points in a P11 area, but nonetheless it would have been encouraging for Sauber to take it to the flag there. But as it was, unfortunately, Bottas was doing a great job but was let down by the car. The team seemed to be getting better with the pit stops now. They've got a temporary fix for the wheel nuts, which they're not going to be able to fix until they come back to Europe fully, but it was encouraging to see them work. The slowest stop was 5.3, the best stop was 2.8, so that's okay. It's in the ballpark, isn't it? Still slow in comparison for Formula 1, but certainly a lot better than 30, 40, 50 seconds. Bottas overall, it's a middle of row 5, which is the maximum I can give a retirement, and I am awarding him 1 bonus point for his sprint weekend format. Unfortunately didn't beat his teammate in that, but still had a great qualifying in that, and had a great solid finish. So yeah, Valtteri Bottas for this weekend overall scores 6 points on the Cruel Room to him. So there we have everything, guys. Those were the runners and riders of the Chinese Grand Prix. Let me know your thoughts and feedback down below. Did I score any drivers too high, any too low? The updated standings with the scores I have just awarded are on the screen now for you to take a look at. Have a look and see where your favourite driver is now, and mainly, do you agree with this sprint format of a maximum of up to 3 points for drivers that do something extra special in the sprint races? You know, they can earn an extra bonus 1, 2 or 3 points. I think that's fair. I think that's a good way to do it because it doesn't influence the championship too much, but still praises maybe an underdog that did a really good job that wasn't able to convert it into the main race itself. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought to it. I will be keeping it for this season to keep it fair for all drivers throughout the season, but let me know if it needs tweaking for next season. And let's take a look at the updated constructor standings then. They're on the screen now for you to take a look at as well. I'm not going to be influencing these in any way this week. I think all the teams pretty much got what they could out of it, to be fair. There was no need for penalising any of the teams. I'm maybe going to start looking at awarding teams bonus points because their drivers are being subpar. But yeah, that can all come a little bit later on. I can have a look and see where I think the teams deserve to be. But yeah, for now, that's the standings. And yeah, there's all to play for in everything, isn't there, at the moment? It's all tight everywhere in both of the championships. So thank you so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate your support. Thank you for continuing your support by watching me on a Tuesday at 6 PM now. This one was supposed to be out on a Monday, but I was a little bit tired after doing 5 gigs on the row and then having to catch up with all the Formula 1 stuff. So yeah, it left me a little bit short on time. But yeah, it will be Tuesday from 6 PM from now on, as you know, with the time zone switching to Miami in a couple of weeks. 9 o'clock at night on a Sunday is when the race is for the UK people. So yeah, I'm certainly not going to be able to get a video out for Monday. So from now on, Tuesday 6 PM for the rest of the season for the Cruel Room Championship. Thanks for your continued support. Really enjoying it this season. I hope you're loving the alterations and the 90s vibe we're making too to it. And yeah, look forward to seeing you all for the Miami Grand Prix. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and as always, much love.